Good afternoon and a pleasant welcome to News Hour live on the SLBC. I am David Patrick Kamara. Coming up in this edition of News Hour, Environment Protection Agency and Office of National Security embark on community education in disaster-prone areas. SLPP Technical Committee presents an examination of the 2015 Population and Housing Census provisional results to the Diplomatic Corps. And Chancellor of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China to Sierra Leone receives another batch of Chinese medical doctors to Sierra Leone. All those stories, including business and sports, are lined up in this edition of News Hour. Welcome back for our first story this afternoon. As the rains are already here, the Environment Protection Agency and the Office of National Security have embarked on community sensitization campaign in disaster-prone areas in the western area. This move, according to the two institutions, is to give prior warning to people residing in disaster-prone areas about the consequences of their staying there. It could be recalled that flooding in September 16 last year wreaked havoc on lives and property. Shaku Sumaila has more.
It's now a concern whenever the rainy season commences that the possibility of flooding is high, as Sierra Leoneans continue to reflect on the September 16th flooding, which wreaked havoc on lives and property in the western area. The rains are now here, and alarm is being raised, which has prompted the Environment Protection Agency, EPA, and partners to embark on community sensitization programs in over 30 disaster-prone areas in the western area, with Krabtown community being the first port of call. Even before last year's flooding, the Environment Protection Agency warned inhabitants here to take proactive measures to mitigate the effects of climate change. Much efforts were not made, and the rains came, and disaster occurred. The Environment Protection Agency is working with other institutions like Office of National Security to raise awareness on the need for them to protect their environment. A representative from Office of National Security, John Rogers, said the people should be conscious of the fact that this time around there is no way government can relocate people to the Siaka Stadium because sporting activities are ongoing, as it only happened then because of the Ebola outbreak, which put on hold all activities at the Siaka Stadium. The reason why they should take seriously whatever warning they receive from EPA and ONS. He encouraged them to be listening to radio as updates on weather conditions will be communicated to them so that they will know what to do in the event of erratic weather. Stop cutting trees, don't deposit plastic in the drainages, and always clean your environment, Mr. Rogers said. The director of EPA, Mamadou Ba, encouraged the people to plant trees and advised them not to block waterways. Jatu Jalo is executive chairperson of EPA.
Well, the rationale obviously is to educate our people about disasters and to prevent any loss of lives and property during the coming rainy season. Well, our message is that we have to be responsible for our environment. Our activities are the cause of the climate change issues. Our activities in most cases is causing the flooding that leads to the destruction of properties. So we're here again this year to educate our people, to be able to respond to some of their questions and to see where and how government can come in to address some of their challenges.
Community people call on EPA and ONS to come to their aid by constructing a drainage in the Krabtown community and to always advise those in the hilltop to stop depositing rubbish into the drainages.
side back. They don't close inside the water. So the water they go no way. They don't pass. Right now look at they go so.
It's where western area. Now one dirty box no man see. One great dirty box. When I done that street. Where that dirty box they safe. If it rain come, then they put the dirty all can down to we and so. And we were then borrowing at this country so inside this Kitchen area. The dirty box told me they pass 5.
We live down on the valley and the problem of the hill, they throw everything come down in our young community. Actually, we said need for the play a part, which will depend on the but we're not going to take them away to the point where we will not get guys go and go and think them.
Similar program was held in the Krobe community, where similar messages were disseminated by officials from the Environment Protection Agency. Community people were also given the opportunity to make contributions. The key message was, the rains are here, so take precautions. Sierra Leone has been identified as the second most vulnerable country to climate change, which makes it absolutely necessary to ensure that adaptation and mitigation measures are put in place to protect life and property. Reporting for SLBC News, I'm Sheku Smaila.
A technical committee set up by the main opposition Sierra Leone People's Party, SLPP, has presented its assessment of the 2015 population and housing census provisional result to the diplomatic corps. The presentation to the diplomatic corps and the international community was the SLPP's position on the provisional results that were released in March this year. Here is the report. Giving an overview of the significance of the meeting, the chairman of the occasion, Dr. Abbas Chernobundu, said when the provisional results were released in March, the SLPP wrote letters to Statistics Sierra Leone and the National Electoral Commission (NEC) disagreeing with the growth rate in certain districts, especially in the northern region, therefore calling on NEC to put on hold the constituency boundary delimitation. He said NEC referred them to Statistics Sierra Leone and have started the boundary delimitation. Dr. Bundu said they, as a responsible political party, thought it fit to put together a technical report on their position on the 2015 census to the diplomatic corps and the international community, whom he said have put resources to get a credible data that will be used for the development of Sierra Leone. Making a presentation on the cartographic mapping, Moses Williams said every household was to have been visited by Statistics Sierra Leone because of the increase in population and the extinction of some communities in the country, a venture Mr. Williams claimed was not successfully carried out by Statistics Sierra Leone. He claimed that 422 enumeration areas in the Kenema district were reduced to 308, an act Mr. Williams said is unacceptable. Professor Lawrence Kamara, who heads the technical committee of the SLPP, said the recruitment of people he referred to as APC party members as senior officials of SSL is among the factors responsible for the flaws in the provisional results. Professor Kamara said the population growth rate from 2004 to 2015, according to Statistics Sierra Leone, is 2.3%, which they question and see as scientifically inaccurate for a country like Sierra Leone. The professor said the low growth rate in the Kenema, Bo, Moyamba and Western Rural Districts are clear indications that the provisional data cannot be trusted.
We cannot see, for instance, the inconsistencies in the data. And what cannot go into rank of 1 is a growth rate of 102.7%. If you want that further, it is even more ridiculous because you have Western Rural that has a rank of 11 and has a very astronomical growth rate of 8.5%, as compared with, for instance, Kamara, which has a rank of 8 and has a growth rate of only 3.7%. So we can see by doing several comparisons on this map, you can actually see the several inconsistencies that are there in this population data.
Members of the diplomatic corps and the international community thanked the SLPP for putting the report together and said it needs thorough digestion to be able to make a conclusion. But John Callaghan, Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Ireland, said the claims by the SLPP Technical Committee that chiefs were not included in the cartographic work was untrue, and that the population of Kenema district actually increased by 22%, which the team did not include in their report.
So number one is that the census process was and is being monitored by an international monitoring group. It has 7 census experts, including a technical expert from the UK Department of Statistics and a technical expert from DFID and other representatives from African countries. There are also 7 representatives from national civil society organisations and from academia and the UN family within Sierra Leone. That group, that monitoring group, did write a report on the enumeration process, which they found to be satisfactory. If you look at the percentage weights of all 4 provinces, you will see that there were very small declines in Southern Province and Eastern Province of 1% and 2% each. There was no change in the population weight of the Northern Province as a percentage of the overall population, and there was a small increase in Western area of 2 or 3%. So maybe could the statistician make a comment on that, because that they are in line with the trends that have been going on since the first census in 1965, where the population of the Northern Province decreased significantly and at the expense of Western area, which increased. Another point just to make on the interesting statistics that you had on Kenema district was that although there were definitely chiefdoms where the population decreased, overall as a district, the population of Kenema increased by 22%.
But the head of the SLPP Technical Committee, Professor Kamara, said they as a party were even expecting an increase of over 22% in the Kenema district. After several deliberations, Dr. Abbas Pundu said the SLPP will not accept the result and threw an open challenge to SSL to sit and exchange ideas with the technical team of the SLPP to lay the matter to rest once and for all. David Patrick Kamara, SLBC. The Chancery of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China to Sierra Leone, Zhao Kai-shen, has applauded the outgoing Chinese medical team for the humanitarian services to strengthening the health sector in Sierra Leone. He made the applause while welcoming the new batch of Chinese medical team at the Jue Hospital. Joseph Stanley reports.
According to Mr. Sheng, this year is the 46th anniversary of the diplomatic ties between the two countries, and that the 8 batches of Chinese medical team have so far been sent to Sierra Leone. The Councillor expressed appreciation to them for their valuable contribution to the health sector, especially during the Ebola outbreak. He pledged the Chinese government commitment to support the government of Sierra Leone in the post-Ebola recovery plan, as it is in line with government's agenda for prosperity.
This year marks the 45th anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic ties between China and Sierra Leone. China has sent 18 batches of doctors and nurses to Sierra Leone in the past years. It is the Hunan province of China who takes these responsibilities. The Chinese medical teams have brought not only the friendship, but also the professionalism to serve the saloons, and have made great contributions to the health sector of Sierra Leone. During the Ebola outbreak, the Chinese doctors and nurses stood fast and held their post firmly, regardless of the deadly virus. They stood as a resilient force in fighting against Ebola. And what they have done truly reflected the brotherhood of China and Sierra Leone, no matter how bad the situation is.
The Deputy Director of the Health Family Planning Commission of the Yunnan Province of China, Mr. Zhang, said the Chinese medical teams have played significant roles to develop the health sector in the country, and assured the gathering that the new Chinese medical team will live up to their expectations.
The medical superintendent of the Sierra Leone China Friendship Hospital, Dr. Alex Kanu, recalled the opening of the hospital in 2012, but due to the high use of fees, people refused to patronize the facilities at the hospital. He added that after the Ebola crisis, they commenced operation at minimal cost, and the situation has changed as facilities at the hospital are now fully utilized.
The medical services were okay, but one area that the people have been complaining is the users' fees that they considered very exorbitant. But when the Ebola struck, the Shandong people went back to China, and then the hospital returned back to the Sierra Leonean people. So we welcome it, and then it's like a part of a return of this hospital to this hospital is part of the Ebola outbreak. Now I will talk about the outgoing Chinese medical team. They were working under incredibly difficult conditions. Just after the Ebola, so many things were not in place in the hospital. But in spite of all of these things, they were able to overcome the difficulties, and we had to treat people. First, we started with outpatient services, and then later we moved to admission services.
Dr. Kanu lauded the efforts of the outgoing medical team for their humanitarian services and welcomed the new batch, especially the additional doctors, and expressed hope that they will do their best to serve humanity. The donation of medical consumables to the hospital formed part of the ceremony. SLBC News, Joseph Stanley reporting.
Bishop Emeritus of the Methodist Church Sierra Leone, the Right Reverend Arnold Temple, has called on the Ministry of Education to take the contribution of churches seriously in improving the education sector. Bishop Temple made the statement during the certification ceremony of the Children's Ministry of the Methodist Church Sierra Leone held at the John Ezidio Hall in Freetown. Hannah Tukonte has more.
Bishop Arnold Temple describes the day as very special for the children and the Methodist Church. According to the Bishop Emeritus, the Sunday School ministry aimed at shaping the lives of the children to become good citizens with the right attitudes. He also touched on the spate of indiscipline wrecking the country, especially the metropolis of Freetown. Bishop Arnold Temple therefore calls on the Attitudinal and Behavioral Change Secretariat to seize the preaching and help put policies in place of the right attitudes of citizens. The bishop also calls on the Ministry of Education to take the engagement of the churches in education seriously and try to hand over the schools so that they can rekindle the good old days of the formation of children for adulthood.
I want to call on the Ministry of Education to take the church's participation in education seriously, to the point at which presently the churches do not have control of their schools. I pray that as we move towards our engagement in constitutional reforms, will take that into consideration.
Chairperson of the Committee of the Methodist Church Sierra Leone Children's Ministry, Reverend Dr. Olivia Wesley, informed the gathering that the event was unique and memorable for the growth of the church. She said that it helps to nurture the spiritual and emotional well-being of the children. 173 wrote the exams, but only 143 passed and received assorted Bible gifts. Secretary of Conference, Reverend Bob Williams, and the Chairman of the Western District Synod, Reverend Arnold Achakambul, called on the children to be steadfast and treat the Sunday School program with seriousness. Chairperson of the occasion, Reverend Selena Pratt, says Sunday School, besides the scriptures, can help build children holistically to be able to serve humanity, hence describing the Sunday School program as significant for the children. While Sister Rosamund Williams recognized the commitment and hard work of the children, urging them to be punctual and regular to learn more. She discourages the children from letting the worldly desires take dominion over them, but also strives to be on the side of God. Madam Williams assures the gathering that there is a room for the great and lowly, the rich and the poor, the weak and the strong. She therefore urges the children to learn and put into practice the moral lessons acquired from the Sunday school program.
Public Relations Officer, Sierra Leone Maritime Administration, Kadiatu Kamara, has called on coxswains to adhere to sea safety regulation to prevent sea accidents. She made the call during the training of coxswains at Bonth. Doreen Kaloko sent in this report.
These coxswains were trained on navigational skills, survival techniques, search and rescue at sea with the aim to prevent sea accidents. The Public Relations Officer, Sierra Leone Maritime Administration, Kadiatu Kamara, said that capacity building of local boat owners is key to address sea accidents and to protect the lives and properties at sea. She said that they have been conducting similar trainings for coxswains nationwide. Madam Kamara said that the trainings looked at the principles and values of maritime safety, the importance of having first aid kits at sea, and the use of life jackets, which are basic standards. She spoke about the institution's stance to ensure that passengers comply with rules and regulations governing sea.
Because we notice, say, then coxswain they are people we need for know exactly the basic navigational skills them. They need to get knowledge over the outboard machine. They need for know the survival techniques them. They need for know the search and rescue operations in the event something happen at sea. So all them things they are not like we just need for explain. We need for can teach them and practicalize them as well. That are the reason why we can bond them after the training. We they give them certificates where they qualify them for going at sea and then captain them boats them.
Safety Inspector Maritime Administration Alfred Keferson spoke about the importance of safety. Captain Musa Fofana commended the Sierra Leone Maritime Administration for such a laudable venture.
Unapproved teachers at the Kenema district have down-tooled. According to them, the government has not made them permanent after teaching for some 3 years. They claim they have authentic certificates from the Eastern Polytechnic, which they have presented to the Education Ministry, but have been described as fake. Francis Danema sent in this report, read by Kojo Kwafo.
Since Dr. Menkailuba was appointed Minister of Education, several people have pointed accusing fingers at him for not massively employing teachers. The defense of the ministry has always been that several certificates presented to the ministry are false. These approved teachers who have spent at least 3 years in the teaching field claimed to have authentic certificates from the Eastern Polytechnic. These certificates, according to the teachers, were sent back to them by the Ministry of Education without stating any reason.
I have a document that proves that I am a trained and qualified teacher of Sierra Leone. However, since 2012 I left the academic institution, I had the belief that I was going to be one of the peaceful Sierra Leoneans to the national cake. But as of now, the national government, which we all believe, we all made it the way where they are today, they are not honest with us. You know, how may I have completed my course after 4 good years only for me to be approved for the service I'm rendering? I'm very sure the position the president has today, the ministers, the ambassadors, members of parliament, and every other person so far, the knowledge they are using, we are giving to them by us, the teachers.
Since I left Eastern Polytechnic in 2010, I have taught for complete 6 years. My name is not on payroll. And what really annoys us as teachers in Kenema district, during the Ebola crisis, the Minister of Education came in Kenema. He said Kenema is under quarantine and including Kalam. But since Ebola finished, we can see the minister doing recruitment in other parts of the country, and Kenema is still behind.
They called on the Ministry of Education to employ them so that they can fulfill their desire of becoming full-time teachers. A student of Eastern Polytechnic who is studying a Bachelor of Education, Ishmael Tarawale, expressed fear that he may not also gain employment in the teaching field after graduation. He said he may decide to change his course to engineering since recruitment of teachers is appalling.
My wish was to become a teacher, but because of the nasty situation, because of the situation very worse, I've said appalling. I've decided to go on a department to become civil engineering because I don't want to become a teacher. That is poverty. Myself, any country cannot develop without proper education, and the people who can impart this knowledge, those skills, knowledge into the people are the teachers.
The Kenema District's Sierra Leone Teachers Union chairman, Abdul Karim, displayed the certificates of unapproved teachers, which he said are authentic, but were refused employment by the Ministry of Education. He said Kenema District has more than 200 unapproved teachers. If the unapproved teachers down their tools, Abdul Karim went on, several schools will be affected, hence will affect education of children in the district.
For the amount of the quantum of unapproved teachers in the classroom, if they decided to abandon the classroom, it is going to create a vacuum which we, the approved teacher, cannot cover. So we are pleading, we don't need to plead. I mean, it's a must. The government should, because for quite a long time, it will interest you to know that teachers have taught for about 8 years, 9 years in Kenya. They will not be approved.
All efforts to get a response from the Ministry of Education is yet successful.
Training of ministries, departments and agencies on financial and contractual procedures of the European Development Fund has started at the Country Lodge Hotel Hill Station in Freetown. The leading Austrian public sector consultant is training the participants on public finance management, taxation, education, employment and social services, among others. Minister of State, Ministry of Finance, Fode Bella Mansari opened the session. Francis Bernard reports.
Declaring the workshop open, the Minister of State, Fode Bella Mansari, entreats participants to take the training very seriously, to acquire the needed skills and knowledge for the proper utilization of the European Union resources for the transformation of the country. The minister describes the EU as one of the most dependable partners with the greatest support to Sierra Leone, noting that the country's greatest weaknesses are the proper use of resources. According to him, the EU does not attach conditionalities like other partners, but it expects the country to use the resources to benefit its citizens.
I say EU is the most dependable and the most it is the organization that used the greatest amount of resources to Sierra Leone. Under the present EDF, which is EDF 11, which is for the period 2014 to 2020, we have been allocated 376 million euros. And depending on our capability to utilize these resources, the amount could be upped. If at all we are able to utilize these ones before the expiry of the EDF cycle. So it is very important that you who are representing the focal sector ministries dedicate yourselves during the next 2 weeks to what the trainers are going to tell us.
Head of the European Union delegation, Ambassador Peter Vastag, says the EU is supporting Sierra Leone with a total sum of 376 million euros as grants for 6 years, spanning from 2014 to 2020 for the development of the country. The EU ambassador explains that 80 million euros is meant for budget support, 70 million euros for the agricultural and educational sectors, 140 million euros for the construction of roads, and 3 million euros as support to the National Authorizing Office. He says all the projects are owned and going to be implemented by the government. Hence, the essence for the training of MDAs cannot be overemphasized in ensuring the EU rules and procedures are followed to the letter in the use of its resources.
We now have to implement on all of these programs in a very short space of time and make sure that everything is delivered effectively and reaches the end target groups. And this is why it's important that everybody is trained and understands the procedures. What's key to this program is that it's not just a bipartite relation between the government of Sierra Leone and the EU, it's a tripart one in many of these programs where the line ministries play an equally important role. So all of the programs that are implemented are driven by the national counterpart. The government of Sierra Leone owns these programs, and we count on the ministries and the line ministries and the development agencies to understand and work towards the goal of the government of Sierra Leone.
The Director of National Authorizing Office, Ibrahim Surikano, informs SLBC that the government wants to increase the net benefits from the funds allocated to the country by the EU. Thus, he explains what is expected of the participants at the end of the 2 weeks training.
The more knowledgeable and educated and experienced with the EDF procedure, the less will be the amount of ineligible expenditures that government will be asked to, government will be obliged to refund. Therefore, it will increase the net benefit to the country from these funds that are allocated to us.
All participants expressed the hope that the skills and knowledge they will gain from the training will aid them in the implementation of the EU-funded government projects in Sierra Leone.
You're watching news on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. Up next is the business stories, and for that we join Judith Sana.
Hello and welcome to the business updates. Coming up, the foreign exchange rates. The US dollar buys at 6,003 leones and sells at 6,124 leones. Pound sterling buys at 8,673 leones and sells at 8,850 leones. Euro buys at 6,816 leones and sells at 6,953 leones. That's the foreign exchange rate courtesy of the United Bank for Africa, UBA. The proprietor of J&F Investment Sierra Leone Limited, John Cisse, in collaboration with Total Sierra Leone Limited, has commissioned a filling station at the Potloko Road, Kafubulum Chiefdom in Lungi. According to the proprietor, the establishment of the Total filling station will help alleviate fuel shortage in Kafubulum and Lokomasama Chiefdoms. Here's the report. This filling station will serve lubricants users in Lunge and its immediate environs. Even though there are other filling stations, community members appeared to be appreciative for the establishment of Total filling station. Commercial bike riders, drivers and community members say they have suffered for decades on the perpetual fuel shortage caused by hoarding. They say with the availability of fuel, it will provide interlinkage for fishermen, drivers and bike riders.
We the drivers them, you gather them, the fishermen them, and we suffer too much. When fuel done, the lorry then go increase the price. Because when you go for fish or for bike, they say fuel, you go buy the liter 8,000 or 10,000. Then when you go and see for go buy fish, they say fuel load you. This fish was here yesterday 2,000, today 5,000. So gladly we tell the bank, but who take it? According to the proprietor John Cisse, the J&F Investment Sierra Leone Limited is a private and family-owned company registered to undertake series of business ventures, including the management and operations of filling stations and a shopping complex. He adds that his company collaborated with Total Sierra Leone Limited because of its records in upgrading safety standards, product quality and service delivery. Mr. Cisse says despite he is competing with other fuel stations, he is determined to alleviate the suffering of people on the perpetual fuel crisis in the Kafubulum Chiefdom.
Indeed, there are few filling stations, but over the years, most of them lost their credibility to operate as proper filling stations. The basic thing is that most of them do not even run the stations as they ought to. And because of that, the moment they receive fuel, within a few hours, they say fuel is finished and they close the pumps at the station.
It says 48,000 liters are available to start the business and more will soon be supplied. He adds that the filling station will be operating from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. each day. He says the development is a testimony of what private individuals can achieve towards the realization of President Goma's agenda for economic development. The proprietor expresses thanks to Tuto Sierra Leone Limited and other business houses for their support towards the success of the project. Network manager Tuto Sierra Leone Limited, Ishmael Conte, says Tuto is a multinational company operating in 130 countries. He registers his company continued support to J&F investment in providing quality service delivery to customers. Mr. Conte discloses that Toto Sierra Leone Limited will start the project of solar installment in all its filling stations. Paramount Chief Kafubulom Chiefdom by Shebra Sheba Bere III registers his support to the proprietor for investing in his chiefdom. He calls on the community to support and report any distractors that may want to hinder the project. Similar sentiments were made by the Member of Parliament of Constituency 54 and other local authorities. Judith Sana reporting for SABC. Sierra Leone's first bank governor, Dr. Silvanus Bamidele Nikukul, has died at the Choitlam Hospital at the age of 95. The central bank has opened a book of condolence starting from the 13th to the 17th of June. The late Dr. Silvanus Bamidele Nikukul has contributed immensely to the development of the financial sector. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Well, that's it from the Business Desk. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Judith Sana, for the latest in business. We continue with more stories. The National Youth Commission, the National Commission for Children, in collaboration with the Ministry of Labour, has engaged communities on the dangers of child labour. The commission targeted residents from stone mining and deprived communities as part of activities to mark World Day Against Child Labour. Princess Gibson was at the engagement held at Park of Old School Hill Station.
World Day Against Child Labour is set aside by the United Nations to call attention on the dangers of child labour, a practice that is given less attention in Sierra Leone but poses serious threats to the development of a child. This engagement by the National Commission for Children targeting stone mining communities is part of efforts to raise awareness on its effects on children. Even though children are expected to work for parents, they should not be given jobs that affect their growth, health and ability to benefit from school.
If we know the same pikin up for work, who then go there when you want drink water, you never call the pikin for handy and water. But waiting with the try for say, the work where they do, enough for affect their health, that their well body business. Enough for affect their development, enough for affect their school business, and enough for affect their ability for benefits from school.
The home, she said, is expected to control and regulate their children. For the Hilltop South Ridge, Sunshine and Bangbaila communities, stone mining is a concern, according to Councillor Samuel Kagbo.
If you watch this area, people depend on stone breaking. The swamp side, there are more of plants, and people in the plants are the place. And the Pikinian can go water garden. Some of the Pikinian, most of them depend on stone breaking. The people depend on stone breaking. So the people in back, the Pikinian said they join their own parents for good books.
Sire Kalon, a class 6 pupil, dropped from school and engaged in stone breaking, but has returned to school with the intervention of the National Commission for Children.
Representative to really begin them, and they want me paying them and they help me for the school business and the elders over there today. Me and one party begin really broke stone. So they have for tell me paying them say, madam go to help me for the school business, me not go to broke stone again.
At the end of the engagement, it was clear that a major factor for the involvement of children in stone mining is to raise funds to cater for the home. These are, according to a board member of the National Commission for Children, is unacceptable. Stakeholders pledged their support and commitment to minimize child labor in their communities. Princess Gibson, SLBC News.
Well, that's our last news story for this afternoon. To end news are the main points again. The Environment Protection Agency and the Office of National Security have embarked on community education on disaster-prone areas. The SLPP Technical Committee has presented its assessment of the 2015 Population and Housing Census provisional results to the Diplomatic Corps. And the Chancery of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China to Sierra Leone has welcomed the fresh batch of Chinese medical doctors to Sierra Leone. That's all we have time for in this edition of News Hour, broadcast live on the SLBC. On behalf of the news editor Ibrahim Mansari and David Patrick Kamara. For more on our programs, you can send us an email to contact us at slbc.sl. Up next is Issues in the News. Good afternoon.